All right, let's get started. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sierra. I am founder and lead advisor here at Infinite Heights Wealth Management. And I started Infinite Heights because I wanted to do things differently in the industry. For those of you who know my story, I am incredibly passionate about helping the people who really need it the most. And unfortunately, this industry is still very rooted in serving the already wealthy. A lot of the firms that do work with Middle America, especially PERS members, are focused on product sales. So I wanted to start Infinite Heights. We are completely independent. We do not offer any proprietary products to sell you. Our goal is really to provide unbiased guidance and advice and education for our clients. I've always believed that the more my clients understand for themselves, the better decisions they're going to make. And it's ultimately those decisions that have the single largest impact on your retirement success or your financial success. It's why I offer these workshops. We try to offer different financial topics once a month. If you would be interested in signing up for future topics, please go to our website, sign up for our newsletters where we let you know what topics are being offered and also share our recent blogs. We try to post a lot of blogs with just free educational content for you. We're also on Instagram, and we're actually one of the very first licensed firms on Instagram. We're part of a pilot program. So we're very excited, again, to just get more free educational content out there. We also offer educational 60-minute consultations for anybody listening to this call. If you'd like to sign up after to get some of your individual questions answered, please do. We want that hour to be absolutely beneficial for you. We will talk about our services. If you'd like to hire us to work with you on an ongoing basis, we will cover that, but we really want that 60 minutes to be beneficial. We want you to leave with your questions answered and feeling like it was really a beneficial use of your time. So enough about me. We are here to talk about PERS. And I'd like to talk about just why it's so important that we understand the PERS system, why we talk about the importance of retirement preparation. And I like to start with just a story of a client of mine, Bob and Lori. I met them a few years ago, and Bob retired back in 2006. He was just like a lot of PERS retirees. He worked for 30 years as a teacher, and when he hit his 30 years, he ran his PERS benefit estimate, and he looked at the income he was going to receive from PERS. He looked at the income he would receive from Social Security, and he thought, between the two, he would be making more money than he was making while he was working. So Bob and Lori felt really confident in their decision to retire. Bob also had a small IAP. He had a 403B that he had been contributing to as well. So between the two of them, they had about $200,000, which might not seem like a lot of money, but again, this was 2006, and they also felt like this was truly just their emergency fund. This was just their nest egg that they never planned on touching. They felt like they could really live off of their fixed income and that they would be just fine. That might have been the case, except fast forward a couple years, what happened in 2008, 2009 for them, their retirement nest egg was suddenly cut in half. And again, might not have been too big of an issue for them if they were able to just leave that alone and allow it to recover. But their daughter was in a really tricky financial situation. She was a single mom, and she was in a position where she was about to lose her house. So Bob and Lori made a really difficult decision, and they decided to sell out of their retirement at a low point in the market when everything was down and lock those losses in so that they could help their daughter keep her home. Fast forward 10 years later, they were now 70, in their early 70s, 72, 73, and they were completely out of money. That retirement nest egg was completely depleted, and they were, again, early 70s and having to go back to work. That's actually when I met them, and it was difficult. And I don't tell that story to scare you. I tell you that story because it's actually really common. I have met several PERS retirees over the years who are in a very similar boat. And part of that reason is because PERS is not designed the same today as it was years ago. Back in the day, your parents might have been able to retire from PERS and never worry about retirement planning because they were making more money from their PERS income alone than they were while they were working. Again, PERS is not designed the same today. And so it is really important that we look at the full picture of your retirement plan, not just PERS, and that we understand what role PERS is going to have. Because for most of you, PERS is still going to be the foundation of your retirement plan, but it's not everything. One of the biggest benefits of PERS is that you also will have Social Security. That's a huge benefit that's often overlooked or underappreciated. A lot of state pensions do not allow you to have Social Security on top of PERS. So that's a huge benefit. You'll have PERS, you'll have Social Security. You also have supplemental retirement plans available to you as a PERS member. You have a 403B, you have 457s, and you have IRAs. We also live in a world where supplemental income is easier than ever to make in retirement, whether that's double dipping, which is really popular right now and we will cover, whether that's working part-time, driving for Uber Eats, selling your projects that you like to do in retirement on Etsy, whatever the case is, there are a lot of creative ways to make and create supplemental income in retirement. And that's all really important because, like Bob and Lori, PERS and Social Security do not keep up with inflation. So while it might feel like you have plenty of money those first few years of retirement, eventually you will have to have your own supplemental income to tap into to help you keep up with rising costs around you. There's also just taxes to consider. When you run your PERS benefit estimate and you look at that income that you're going to be receiving and you look at your Social Security statement, you see that income, you need to remember that that income is gross. That will be taxed. So you have to factor in your net income and make sure that you feel confident that that net income is enough. There are also other things that we need to consider, like health insurance and just different risks that we want to protect ourselves against. Like Bob and Lori, are there unexpected expenses that you might have in retirement that might put you in a really vulnerable position? What things can we do today to just give ourselves the highest chance of success in retirement? That's why we're here, and that's why we're taking time to really understand PERS and understand some of those decisions that we have to make. Today, we're really just focused on PERS. We're not going to look at retirement planning as a whole. We're really just going to zone in and focus on the things that are important to know about the foundation of your retirement, which is the PERS system. So the first thing that we're going to cover is the explanation of your retirement benefits. We're going to talk about the different tiers, how to know what tier you're in, and also what are the important things for you to know about your tier. One of the most important things to understand about PERS in general that a lot of people don't understand is that there are actually two parts to PERS, and they're completely separate. There's your defined benefit portion, which is part one. That is your pension. That is the monthly benefit that you're going to receive when you retire that you cannot outlive. That's your pension. And that is the regular account, or that first part of the statement, which we've all probably just received our 2022 annual statements in the mail. So that's part one. Part two is your defined contribution. That's your IAP, your individual account program. Everyone has those two parts of PERS. That's the second portion on your annual statement. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about when you are eligible to retire based on your tier. We'll talk about some of the recent changes with the Senate Bill 1049, how to calculate your benefit. That's a huge one. Everyone wants to understand how do you accurately calculate your benefit, and then what options you're going to have when you retire and what decisions you're going to have to make when you go to fill out your retirement application. So first things first, understanding the differences between tiers. When I used to do these presentations in person, I would make all of the tier one members raise their hand, and the rest of us knew who to be jealous of in the room because, as we all know, tier one is the best tier. Tier one is anyone hired before January 1st of 1996. And when PERS was originally designed, your member contributions went in to your regular account balance. And you had the option of putting those member contributions into a regular account or a variable account. Some of you tier ones might remember making that choice. The regular account back in the day was earning a guaranteed fixed rate of return of 8%. The variable account was invested in the market. At the time, market was earning average 20% returns. So it actually felt like a pretty hard choice. You go for a safe and guaranteed 8%, or do you potentially get 20%? As we all know, keeping up with a guaranteed 8% increase over time did not work out very well, and PERS realized they could not keep that promise up. They had to make a change. And so in 1996, they created Tier 2. So we'll talk about Tier 2, but for Tier 1 members, you have a portion of your member contributions either in the regular account or the variable account, depending on what you selected. Now that fixed rate of return has been reduced to 7.2%, but still phenomenal rate of return. If you are Tier 1 and you do have a variable account balance, just something to note, you can do a one-time variable request to transfer the money from the variable account into the fixed account. You can only do that one time. If that's something that you're considering, if you're close to retirement and have money in the variable account, it might be a good option to look into. It might be a reason to set up an individual consultation or send me an email so we can talk through the complexities of that, but it's a good thing to know. So the other things to know about Tier 1 are normal retirement age. For Tier 1, if you're general service, that's age 58 or 30 years of service. Doesn't matter how old you are. If you started working at 22 and you hit your 30 years at 52, you can retire. Full retirement age, general service. Police and fire is age 55 or 50 with 25 years. So you have to at least be 50 and you have to have 25 years. But police and fire, age 55 or 50 with 25 years. Early retirement age is 55 or 50 for police and fire. But the thing about early retirement age for all tiers is that PERS will penalize you for taking an early retirement, and that penalty starts at 65% of your PERS benefit, and that lasts throughout your entire life. That doesn't go away once you hit your normal retirement age. You lock that penalty in and you are stuck with that. So it's generally not a great idea to retire and take an early retirement. You want to try to hit your normal retirement age if possible. So Tier 2, like I mentioned, PERS decided and realized they had to make some changes, so they created Tier 2. There's actually not a lot of differences. The main difference was that they took away that guaranteed fixed rate of return. Everyone still chose whether you wanted your money to go into the regular account or the variable account, but they were both invested in the market and both earning whatever the market earned. The other thing they changed is they raised the retirement age from 58 to 60 for general service. But really, not a whole lot of changes here. So as you can imagine, PERS realized that those few changes were not enough. And so in 2003, they completely revamped the system and they created OPSRP, Oregon Public Service Retirement Plan. So the biggest thing to note with OPSRP and what happened in 2003 is that regardless if you were Tier 1 or Tier 2, they stopped everyone's member contributions. From this point forward, from 2003 onward, nobody's money was going into the member account. No new money was going into the regular account or the fixed account. From 2003 onward, all member contributions were going into the IAP, the individual account program. So we'll talk about the IAP next. Everyone has that second portion of PERS, that defined contribution piece. But for anybody starting after 2003 or after August 29th, 2003, their defined benefit or pension piece was defined through this OPSRP tier. Big changes here. They, for general service, raised the retirement age from 58 and 60 to age 65 or 58 with 30 years of service. So that one gets people all the time. I get a lot of OPSRP people who hit their 30 years or will hit their 30 years, I should say, when they will be 52, 55. And you do have to be 58 with 30 years to retire under OPSRP at a normal retirement age or a full retirement age. For police and fire, that's age 60 or 53 with 25 years. Early retirement age is the same, but the big difference is police and fire, you have to be age 50 with 5 years of continuous service in a police and fire position immediately before you retire. That one trips people up all the time for police and fire. So again, if you're wanting to retire early and you're wanting to understand how to make that happen, that might also be another good reason to set up an individual consultation or send an email, because it gets pretty tricky deciding if it's better for you to just leave the system as a police and fire and go down to a general service member and retire earlier, or if it makes sense for you to continue working as a police and fire. So anyway, I digress. The other thing I wanted to say, though, about the change to all of those future contributions going into the IAP is for tier 2. A lot of times I get questions on why your benefit balance in your regular account or in your member account for PERS tier 2 is so small. People get really worked up about this. They're like, I've been working for so long and I have hardly anything in my PERS account. And the reason for that is because for tier 2, you were only putting money in that account between whenever you started, let's say it was 1996 or it could have been 2002, until 2003. And then from that point forward, no new money was going into that account. So for everyone, that tier 2 balance is pretty minimal and it's honestly irrelevant. I'll walk through why that is on a future slide. But main thing to understand here is what tier you're in, when you are eligible to retire, and then there is this handy benefit comparison chart. And this chart is really, really important because this is where I find a lot of problems with the different tiers arise. There are, of course, a lot of PERS members who listen to their peers, their mentors who are retiring, and they follow the advice that they're getting. And a lot of times that advice is not applicable to you if you are not in the same tier. You really want to understand what tier you're in and what advice you should be following based on your tier. This handy chart, which you can scan the QR code. Ever since COVID, we all know how to use those now. So scan the QR code or use the link above, which will take you directly to that handy dandy chart. I really recommend printing this out and keeping it in your lunch space workroom because it solves a lot of arguments. But some of the main things to note here are unused sick leave and unused vacation time. I get a lot of OPSERP or even tier 2 retirees who are thinking that they should not take their sick leave because it will help increase their retirement benefit. And as you can see on this chart, that is not the case for OPSERP, and it might not be the case for tier 2 or even tier 1, depending on your employer. So those are big ones to know. Another big one that I hear a lot, or just a common misconception, is that you can't move out of Oregon when you retire because your PERS benefit will be reduced. That's only true for tier 1. Tier 1, they gave a 8% increase to account for Oregon's 8% state tax. And if you move out of Oregon, they will take that 8% increase off because you no longer need it to account for the state tax. So that's true for tier 1. It's not true for tier 2 and OPSERP. So that's another one I hear often. But again, this chart is really handy. Okay, so I've talked about the IAP already. This is that defined contribution part of PERS. It's that second portion of PERS. And it started in 2004. So from this point forward, everyone in the system, regardless of what tier you were in, all of your contributions were going into this separate account, this IAP. Prior to July 1st, 2020, that was 6% of everyone's salary that went into this account. Starting in July 1st, 2020, they created this IAP redirect. And if you earn more than a certain amount, that's indexed for inflation every year, so that changes every year. 2023, that number is $3,570 a month. So if you're earning more than $3,570 a month and you're tier 1 and tier 2, 2.5% of that 6% is redirected into this EPSA. Only 3.5% of the 6% is going into your IAP. For OBSERV, 5.25% goes into IAP, 0.75% is redirected into that EPSA. And that EPSA was created because PERS, as we probably have all heard, is underfunded. And they created this redirect with the provision that this will be in effect as long as the PERS system is less than 90% funded. The last actuarial valuation showed that PERS is currently 86% funded. So again, they've taken a portion of the 6% of your salary, which may or may not be picked up by an employer, and redirected a portion of that to this EPSA. What is the EPSA? It's your Employee Pension Stability Account. A lot of people got really worked up about this because they feel like PERS is taking a portion of their money and using it to fund PERS's debt or PERS's, again, unfunded liability. They're using it to pay for those tier one members who were and are earning much more than they ever made while they were working. And while this is partially true, PERS will tell you that that's not the case, that this money that they're redirecting is yours. And that's why you see it on your annual statements now. That third portion on the bottom of your statement is your EPSA, and it's a very small balance right now. But they keep it on the statement so that you can see, like, that's not true. This is your money. We are creating this little pot of money for you so that we can use that pot of money to fund your future PERS payment. While that's technically, yes, true, that money, you will never see that money in the EPSA. Let me just put it that way. You would only see that money, I should say, if you decided to forfeit your PERS benefit and just walk away from the PERS system altogether. So if you're not vested and you've only worked for a couple of years and you decide to leave, then sure, you will receive that EPSA money back. But if you retire from PERS and if you receive a PERS retirement benefit, then you will never see that EPSA money. That is just money that's going to help PERS fund their liabilities. So you have the option to, they allow you to voluntarily contribute to make that difference back up in your IAP. So if you're tier one, tier two, you could choose to contribute an additional 2.5% to your IAP to get you back to that 6%. Get a lot of questions on this. The big thing to note is that that's after tax dollars. So if you still have room to contribute to your 403B or your 457, I would really recommend that because that's pre-tax. So you can get your contributions in pre-tax rather than after tax. If you're already maxing your 403B and your 457, then voluntarily after tax, those voluntary after tax contributions might actually be worth it, but just something to note. IAP target date funds is also a relatively new topic. They began in January 1st of 2018. You are automatically invested in an age-based portfolio based on a retirement assumption of 65. So if you're not planning on retiring at 65, if you're planning on working a lot longer or you're planning on retiring a lot earlier, you may want to change your target date fund. You can do this once per year in September. You can change your target date fund to be more in line with your actual retirement date or your risk tolerance. If this is something that you're considering, if you do not feel like a target date of 65 makes sense for you, again, this is a great time to set up one of those consultations. Send an email. We'd be happy to help you walk you through what options are available to you and how to choose the right target fund. Okay, so this topic is everyone's favorite. How do we actually figure out what we're going to get from PERS? And is there any way that we can maximize this benefit and make sure we're getting the most that we can from PERS? So for tier one and tier two, hopefully you remember what tier you are. For tier one and tier two, there are options for calculating your benefit. Initially, remember when I talked about those member contributions? You had the choice when you signed up. Your contributions were going into the regular or the variable account. When PERS was initially designed, when you went to retire, PERS would match you dollar for dollar whatever you had in your member account. So if you had $200,000 saved up in your member account by the time you retired, PERS would match you an additional $200,000, and you would now have $400,000 that you could choose what to do with. That is what is referred to as money match. That's the second option here, money match. In 2003, when they revamped the system and they created OPSRP, they created this formula for calculating your benefit instead. This formula is based on your years of service times your final average salary times 1.67% for general service, tier 1 and tier 2, or 2% for police and fire. They also have this hybrid of the two options, which is full formula plus annuity. We don't see this. Let me back up and say that you do not get the choice of what formula you want to use. I hear that a lot. People will ask me, how do I choose? How do I make the right decision? You don't actually get a choice. You don't make a decision. PERS is going to give you whatever option is going to pay you the highest. And I was just going to say that this formula and annuity option, we hardly ever see give you the highest benefit anymore. So we won't spend any time talking about that. But full formula or money match, most people these days are retiring under full formula because it's giving you more than money match, but you still see a few tier 1s who are getting a little bit more from money match. So again, whatever option is going to give you the highest benefit is what PERS will automatically choose for you. For OPSRP, your situation is really simple. You just have the full formula, very similar, years of service times final average salary, but your factor is a little bit different. 1.5% for general service, 1.8% for police and fire. Now, this is one question we get a lot, and one way that you can try to maximize your retirement benefit. As per stands today, your final average salary is calculated based on your top 3 highest earning years, not your last 3. So you'll see a lot of retirees take an administrative position, work a lot of voluntary hours to try to boost up their last 3 earning years so that it will push their retirement benefit higher. That's definitely an option right now. Important things to remember when you run that calculation and you do that for yourself. A really important thing to remember is PERS does not generally keep up with cost of living. So when you see that number and you think it looks really pretty, make sure that we're factoring for inflation. Because the way that PERS works is PERS gives you a maximum of 2% on any service credit you earned prior to 2013, plus a 1.25% up to $60,000 on benefits that you earned after 2013 up to $60,000, and then 0.15% for any amount over the $60,000. So kind of confusing formula that they work into. We average that 1.25% is pretty accurate, but that's not a guaranteed fixed rate of return or raise that you're getting. That's just the maximum that PERS will give you. So on average, we want to plan for a 3% cost of living when we run retirement projections to make sure that you can keep up with rising costs around you. As we know, this last year, inflation can sometimes be much higher than that, 8 or 9%, but on average, we like to plan for the 3%. So we want to make sure we factor in that cost of living when we run your PERS benefit estimate. We also want to talk about and make sure we are considering taxes. I mentioned that earlier. You will have to pay federal and state taxes on that PERS benefit. And a helpful just thing to know when you're kind of planning out your retirement is that today, tier 1 and tier 2 retirees will typically, on average, receive 53% of their working income in retirement. OPSRP is 45%. So when you talk to your parents and they're earning more than they were earning when they were working, again, that is just not the case for you today. It's anywhere between 45 to 53% of your average salary on average. So again, 403B and 457 plans are available to help supplement your retirement, because really it's your responsibility to make up and provide that difference. If you know that you need to receive the same amount that you're receiving today in order to survive and live in retirement, then the remaining 50% of your retirement has to come from you. Again, Social Security can step in and play a role and be a part of that, but we still have to look at the rest. So what we would like to do if you are within 2 years of being eligible to retire is to request a PERS benefit estimate, an official written PERS benefit estimate. I recommend that you do this even if you're not planning on retiring. If you are eligible, if you're within 2 years of being eligible, go ahead and request one. You get 2 free written PERS estimates per year. I recommend running a couple different dates so that we can get the accurate numbers to plan with, and just make sure that the numbers that you're running online are also accurate, because you can go online. PERS does have a unofficial estimate request on their website. This is not pulling any of your actual data. This is just running that formula based on the information that you give the system. So there's a lot of room for error here. So the official PERS estimate is absolutely crucial to have. You have to have it to retire as well. It will give you information on buyback costs and things like that too. But if you're way out from retirement and you just want to get an estimate, PERS does have an online estimator as well. When you get your estimate, the official estimate and the online estimate, you will see several different payment options available to you. And this is where we get a lot of questions too, because people look at those numbers and they're like, oh my gosh, what choices am I entitled to make, and how do I make the right choice, and what do I need to know? There are actually 13 different ways that you can, or options that you can select when it comes to your PERS payment option. So for tier 1 and tier 2, you again have a little bit more complexities, a few more choices here. When I was talking about that member account example, let's say you had the 400,000, 200,000 from your member account, the 200,000 that they were matching, and I said you could choose what to do with that 400,000. This is the choice. When you go to retire, if you are money match and you have a member account balance, then you could decide to give that full 400,000 back to PERS. You could say, thank you very much, PERS. You hang on to that 400,000, and in exchange, you give me a guaranteed monthly payment that I cannot outlive. That is called a pension or an annuity. So that option on your PERS statement is referred to as the full annuity option. Again, you give whatever's in your money match account or your member account, whatever match they're going to give you, you give it back to the state, and in exchange, they give you a guaranteed monthly benefit that you cannot outlive. The other option is called lump sum. That's where you can take your member account and say, I'd like to take that, thank you very much. I want to go and use it to do whatever. I want to use it to create my own income. I want to use it to pay off my house. I want to use it to go buy a boat. Whatever the case is, you can say, I want my money back. Please give me that 200,000. But the 200,000 that you were going to match me, you can go ahead, you can keep that, and you can give me a guaranteed monthly income for your half. So that's the lump sum option. The total lump sum is, you could say you want both. Give me the 400,000. I want to do what I want with it. We get people who really distrust the PERS system, who just want full control of their money, who choose to take the total lump sum option. We get retirees who don't need the income. They're in a retirement situation where keeping their income low is most important to them, and it makes more sense for them financially to not have an income and just roll over that 400,000 into a pre-tax retirement account that they can control and maybe use to pass on to their future generations, or whatever the case is. There's definitely a lot to consider with these options. You want to be careful with just cashing that out completely, because if you just took it as cash, you would have to treat that as income, pay federal state taxes. A lot of times a big rollover like that or a big cash out like that will put you in a new bracket as well. So we generally recommend, if you're going to do that, that you look for a pre-tax transfer rollover option. But the other thing to just know is that PERS is underfunded for a reason. PERS is giving you too much money. If we're just trying to create income for you in retirement, we cannot beat what PERS is giving you. You cannot take that $400,000 and create a higher income from a private annuity or from the stock market than you can with PERS, and it's guaranteed and you can't outlive it. So if all you care about is getting the highest income, it's generally recommended to take the full annuity option. But again, there are other factors to consider. If you want to minimize some of your PERS, exposure or risk, or if you're in a unique situation where you don't actually need the income or are wanting to do some more advanced planning. Again, if this is you, this is definitely an area that we would really, really recommend you sit down with a professional. It doesn't even have to be me, but make sure you sit down with somebody who understands PERS and you really explore your options and make sure you choose the right choice here, because it's a big, big, big one. And you can't go back. Once you make these choices, you are stuck for life. So these are important choices that you want to feel really confident about. But the other options that you all have, so again, those are choices that only apply to tier 1 and tier 2. Everyone has these beneficiary options, regardless of what tier you're in. When you go to retire, you have to choose your beneficiary option. There are non-survivorship options and there are survivorship options. Non-survivorship options essentially means that it's not tied to one person's life. Survivorship options mean that it's you and one person that you choose. You cannot choose multiple beneficiaries, multiple people. You cannot replace a beneficiary down the road. So really, it's you and one other person's life, typically a spouse, for survivorship options. When you run your benefit and you did that little full formula, you did that calculation, that is giving you your full retirement benefit under option 1. That benefit is for your lifetime only. When you die, that benefit will die with you. That's option 1. That's the full calculation that you run. You have the option and the choice when you retire to select a slightly lower amount, refund annuity, 15-year certain, or any of these survivorship options, to ensure that your benefit would have some sort of beneficiary protection. And here's your choices. So the non-survivorship option, you can choose a refund annuity, which essentially the way to explain that, again, going back to that $200,000 that you might have had in your member account balance, the refund annuity, the way that works is they will subtract whatever you would have already taken from that account balance. And if you pass away and there's still benefit left, that benefit will be dispersed to your beneficiaries. You can have as many beneficiaries as you want. It could be an estate or a charity as well. But the problem with that is that it typically will run out in about 12 years. That's typically the math. So again, to describe that once more, you have $200,000 in your member account. Let's say you're earning $4,000 a month from PERS, or that's your option 1 benefit is $4,000. So refund annuity would be slightly less than that. Maybe you're paying or getting $3,900 instead of $4,000. So you're paying $100 a month for this beneficiary option. And if you collected 1 month's payment out of that, so now you're getting $3,900, you collected 1 payment and then you pass away, that remaining $200,000 or whatever's left of that $200,000 minus $3,900 will go to your beneficiaries. But if you've already used up that $200,000, $3,900 a month times 12, you've already used that up, nothing will go to your beneficiaries. So again, that break even is about 12 years on average. 15-year certain is very similar, but you don't have to worry about whatever's in your member account. It's just ensuring that your beneficiaries would receive at least 15 years of payment, regardless. So again, you will never outlive your PERS benefit. If you live to be 120, you will still receive your PERS benefit. But let's say you lived 5 years into retirement and then passed away, your beneficiaries would get another 10 years of payment. let's say you lived 14 years into retirement and then passed away in year 14, your beneficiaries would get one more year of payment and then those benefits would stop. So again, those are non-survivorship options. For the survivorship options, this is on one other person's life and yours. So option 2 ensures that if you pass away, your benefit will continue for that other person's life for as long as they live. The problem with option 2 is that if that person passes away first, you are still stuck paying a monthly difference and you cannot pick a new beneficiary. You cannot get remarried or put one of your children on. You cannot stop paying. You are stuck paying that difference that you selected when you retired for however long you're still alive, even though there's no need for it because your beneficiary already passed before you. So option 2A is the solve for that. It's called the pop-up provision. And essentially, if you are still alive, you're still getting your member benefit. If you pass away, your spouse or your survivor will continue getting that benefit. But if your survivor passes away before you, you will pop back up to option 1 so that you're no longer paying that difference. So I tend to lean towards the side of flexibility. I tend to like the flexibility with option 2A because you never know, but that's just something to consider. Option 3 is half survivorship, and 3A is pop-up, so same thing. You would get the full benefit while you're alive. When you pass away, your survivor would get half of your benefit. So obviously pretty easy, choice if you're married who to put as that one person survivorship option, but we get a lot of questions around people who are single who want to add their children on as a survivor. Again, you can only have one person, so that can get tricky. And the second thing to note is they're going to calculate that difference between option 1 and option 2, 2A and 3A based on your survivor's mortality. So if you're putting somebody who's really young and they're looking at their mortality and they're saying, gosh, we'll have to pay this benefit out until this 25-year-old is potentially 95 years old, that's going to be a really big difference. It's going to be a really expensive cost to protect that benefit. So if you are insurable, if you do have the option of going out and purchasing private insurance, that's a strategy in the PERS world called pension maximization. And that is definitely something that you should consider exploring if you're not married and you have kids and you want to give them something, you want to choose a beneficiary option that will be there for them. It might be better off for everyone for you to try to do that on your own so that you can have multiple beneficiaries, you have control over the policy, and again, just more flexibility if anything changes later on down your life. This is also a strategy that you can use if you are married and you're just wanting to maintain a little bit more control and just make sure, again, you're making the smartest decisions possible for your family based on your situation. Pension max strategies are something that we definitely can provide a lot more education on, get into the weeds on. And if that's something you're interested in, we'd recommend signing up for a consultation as well to just really dive into all of the different complexities around that. Okay, lots of information here, so I'm just going to take a sip of water. But your other choices that you have are your IAP retirement options and what to do with that IAP. A lot of people look at that when they do understand that, oh my gosh, this is a completely separate part of my PERS and it does not affect my monthly pension. They start to look at that money as this big pot of gold that they can use when they retire to, I don't know, pay off their mortgage, pay off the last bit of debt that they had, take their family on a big, retirement vacation to celebrate, whatever the case is, buy that second home, buy the retirement home. They start to look at this big pot of money as this kind of nest egg that they can just use when they retire for whatever they want. The problem with that is that it was really designed and really built to help give you a solution to keep up with inflation. Because again, that monthly pension piece is now designed to give you about 50% of your working income. This IAP is there to help supplement that remaining 50% that you need. And also it's there because it can be and is invested in the market. So it can be a way for you to continue to grow and help to offset higher cost of living. So we typically will recommend like making sure you have enough supplemental income elsewhere. If you are going to use the IAP early, making sure that you planned ahead and looked long term, because a lot of people, they really need to save that and allow it to grow so it can be there to use for income later on down their life. But again, your options that you have when you go to retire, and by the way, you cannot do anything with the IAP until you retire. So even though they're separate, you have to make these choices together as part of the retirement application. You can choose to cash out your IAP. You do have to pay income tax on that full amount. So you have to be careful because you'll have to pay federal, state taxes. That often puts people in a higher tax bracket. If you're worried about the market, we get this a lot. If you're worried about the market and you just don't feel comfortable investing, so you feel like you want to cash that IAP out so that it doesn't have to be in the market, do not feel like you have to actually cash it out and pay the taxes. You can actually do a pre-tax rollover into another type of pre-tax account, but keep the money in cash. It does not have to be invested. It could stay in cash, but that saves you now the federal and state tax hit. And then you can use that money when you see fit and when you need it. That's the second option, is installment options. So you could kind of do the same thing that we did with PERS, where we say, hey, you keep my IAP and in exchange, you give me income over 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. But the difference here and the downside here is that there's no increase. There's no formula. They're not giving you too much money. They're actually just taking that 200,000 or whatever dollar amount you have in the IAP, and they're keeping that in cash, and they're just dividing that up. So if you did have 200,000 and you chose 10 years, they would take 200,000, divide it by 10, divide it by 12, and that's how much money you're getting monthly. There's no growth on that. There's no increase, and there's also no flexibility. So if you change your mind and you decide, hey, I actually need $10,000 because I have to pay off this debt or fix my roof, you can't get that advance from PERS. So again, if you just want to keep it in cash on your own, you can do that on your own, roll it into a pre-tax account, keep it in cash, decide how you want to divvy that up. If you do want to just create income from it over 10 years, but then you can control that and turn it off or turn it on when you need it. Obviously, you can also keep that money invested, which we would really recommend so that it can grow and can keep up with inflation. But absolutely, that's a whole other conversation as well. But again, happy to talk with you offline about IAP options, investment options, and all of that as well. But we do recommend either way, whatever you plan on doing with it, that you do consider doing a pre-tax rollover first and foremost so that you can minimize and spread out the tax liability. You can roll it into an IRA or a qualified retirement plan, so your 403B, your 457, or your 401k. Some things to consider with that are that your 457, the qualifications for pulling money out of your 457 is that you just have to be separated from service. So for police and fire, a lot of police and fire have 457s, and a lot of police and fire retire earlier. And so if you're going to retire prior to 59 and a half, might be a good idea to roll your IAP into your 457 if you need the money. The downside to this is that you have less investment options and a little less control. The IRA, if you rolled it directly into an IRA, the age limit is 59 and a half before you can access that money penalty free, but it's individual retirement account. It's your money and you have unlimited investment options. So it's something worth exploring. For a 403B, you have to be 55 and separated from service in order to access that money penalty free. As opposed to 59 and a half with the IRA. So just a good point to know there too. We're almost at the end here, but a couple of other PERS benefits that I wanted to talk about are PERS health insurance. PERS does offer health insurance. Their link is also on our website, so you can take take a look and kind of get some more information there. But the biggest things I want to talk on today are these subsidies that they offer, because we get a lot of questions on the subsidies, and also a lot of people who just don't know about them and don't know that they exist. So the first subsidy here is $60 for all PERS members, $60 a month for all PERS members who are entitled to Medicare, who have at least 8 or more service years. So it doesn't matter if you're general service, police and fire, or working directly for a state agency. If you're a PERS retiree, you're Medicare eligible, and you have at least 8 years under PERS, then you could qualify for that $60 subsidy. So it's really important to know about that and get that money if it's available to you. The second subsidy is only for PERS members who retire directly from a state agency. So that is not typically teachers, that's not typically people who work for districts, but if you're working directly for a state agency, you definitely want to look into this subsidy, because it can actually be a much higher amount and a really crucial benefit for you. The amount that they'll give you depends on your service years, so it's something you should look into. But regardless of the subsidy amounts, it is good to look into your PERS health insurance options, because if you are wanting to retire before Medicare, that's 65. PERS or health insurance in general is really expensive for pre-Medicare retirees. PERS gives you options that are between $550 for a low deductible plan and $1,000 a month for a low deductible plan, $550 high deductible, $1,000 for low deductible per person per month. And that's really expensive. So it's definitely something that we should, if you're wanting to retire before 65, really look into, explore your options. I'd recommend working with an independent insurance broker to shop your options. Make sure you compare PERS options, compare the open marketplace, and decide what's going to be most cost effective for you. But good to know that it's an option, and I always think you should start there. Other good things to know about PERS are that PERS does offer in-service death benefits, and this is a recent change. Starting in 2022, 50% of the pension that you would have received in retirement, calculated as if you became inactive on the date of your death and retired at the earliest retirement date allowed, is what gets passed on if you pass away before you make those survivorship options and beneficiary options before you're retired. So it's great that there is a benefit, but again, 50% of what you would have received, also factoring in that you stopped working the date of death, is not all. It can definitely disrupt a retirement plan and a family's retirement plan. So it's something you should look into. Make sure you feel really protected and confident about your options there. Disability retirement benefit is another good thing to look into. Don't have time to go into that today, but it's just important to know that if you do find yourself needing disability, that you start with PERS and explore what options they can give you before looking elsewhere. Okay, purchases and buybacks. This is another topic that we could spend way too long on, but the main thing to understand is that everyone has the chance and the choice to buy back their waiting time. This is the 6 months between your hire date and your membership date. We generally recommend this. It typically is only about a 3-year break even. So if you can make that purchase up front, it's going to pay off for you in the long run. You can also use pre-tax dollars and make that purchase tax-free if you use a 403B or a 457 for that purchase too. Forfeited time, out-of-state teaching time, seasonal positions, disability time, all of these other buybacks are something that if you know that that might apply to you, you should look into and see if that's going to be an option for you. It's really, really hard to calculate the price that it's going to cost, which is really frustrating. It's frustrating for me as well, I know. I'm a planner and I want to be able to run calculations for you, but PERS will not give us those numbers or those prices until you are within that 2-year window. But it's something that you should make note of. If that's you, as soon as you're eligible to retire or fill out an official PERS estimate, do that and see what it would cost you for those buybacks. Okay, double dipping. This is, again, a huge topic right now because starting in 2020, PERS changed their ruling on working after retirement and they took away the hour limitations. So from January 2020 to 2024, you can work as a retired PERS member. You can go back to work in a qualified position for as much as you want, as long as you want. So a lot of people are doing it. A lot of people are trying to decide if they should be doing it right now. Big thing to note is that if they do take this provision away, the way the law was set prior to 2020, if you worked over 1,040 hours as a tier 1, tier 2, or 600 hours as an OPSERP, if you worked over that hour limitation, PERS deemed you no longer retired and required you to pay back every dollar that you have collected from PERS. So obviously that's a huge problem, and you do not want to find yourself in that position. It's very likely that they extend this continuation or continue this no limitations ruling. It's working really well. Most people think that they will, but just in case, if you're double dipping and you find yourself, in 2024, I'm hoping that that sticks with you. Make sure you double check and you watch your hour limitations if it does go back. A calculation for determining your break even to decide if this is a smart choice for you or not is to take the PERS income that you would receive while you were double dipping and divide that by the difference that you would have if you waited to collect your PERS benefit. So if you are going to, let's say, retire from the school district July 1st of this year, and you're going to work one more calendar year, right? You're going to take that PERS income that you would receive that year when you run your PERS estimate on July 1st retirement. If that says you're going to earn $60,000 that year, you're going to take that $60,000, that's going to go on this top line, and then you're going to divide that by the increase if you run another PERS benefit estimate and you say, well, what if I retire July 1st of 2024 instead? You're going to take July 1st, 2024 benefit, subtract that from July 1st, 2023 benefit. That difference, that's what you're going to divide the 60,000 by. And that's going to give you how long it's going to take for you to make up that money, that $60,000 that you're earning from that 1 year of double dipping. So for a lot of people, it's like a 13-year break even. It would take 13 years of that increased 1 year benefit that they're getting from waiting a year to collect PERS. It would take them 13 years of having a higher PERS benefit to make up that $60,000 that they would get from 1 year of double dipping. So they're deciding 13 years, it's not worth it to me. I would way rather double dip and have that extra income right now. Be careful with double dipping because it can put you in a higher tax bracket. If you have the ability to just shuffle that money aside in a pre-tax account, max your 403Bs, max your 457s, max whatever pre-tax accounts, HSAs are available to you, that is the most advantageous way to go about double dipping. So you can really just use those couple years to just really bulk up your retirement account so that you're really ready to go and prepared when you do stop working. It's the best way to do it. But hopefully that helps. Other things, again, to just consider, and these are things that we can really help you with, talking about Medicare, understanding Medicare, making sure you're budgeting for that, understanding Social Security, when to draw Social Security, again, running break evens again, figuring out spousal planning with Social Security too, understanding 403Bs, 457s, IRAs, investment options within each of those accounts, comprehensive retirement planning, looking at not just the PERS piece and the foundational piece of your retirement, but putting everything together to figure out what are you actually needing, what are you needing to save right now in retirement accounts, what should you be putting away, what are things that you specifically for your situation should be concerned about, and what are things that we can do to protect that and strengthen your plan. When and how do we actually create income from your investment accounts? So that's absolutely our specialty. We're happy to walk through kind of that full picture comprehensive retirement planning with you. And then we also offer just advanced planning if you are one of those PERS members who has a more complicated retirement case or just has really specific kind of advanced planning questions. we would be happy to help you with that as well. So our key takeaways from today: remember the tier you're in and the differences between tiers so that you're not making decisions based on information that doesn't apply to you. Make sure you choose the right options for your unique, specific situation. We love to get advice from friends, but we want to make sure that you're making decisions that are right for you. Understand the different optional benefits and things that we should be looking into further, like buybacks, double dipping, insurance benefits. Understand that PERS is only a small part of your overall retirement plan. It is not everything. So you need to plan ahead and you need to save on your own. Remember that we have useful forms and links on our website. QR code will take you to sign up for a free consultation if you'd like to sit with us one-on-one. Again, 60 minutes where we can just answer your questions and hopefully provide just a lot of beneficial information to you. If you'd like to talk with us about our services and what we can offer to you on an ongoing basis, we'd be happy to do that as well. So please sign up for a consultation, sign up for our newsletter, follow us on Instagram. Our next workshop coming up in June is what you need to know about long-term care. It's a really important topic for retirees. 70% of retirees will need long-term care in their retirement. It's a really, really high number. So again, just education on why we need to talk about long-term care, what you need to know about long-term care. So definitely be on the lookout for that as well. And then please feel free to send us any questions that you have. We'd be happy to try to provide as much education and help as we can. So hope you found this helpful and reach out with any more.